BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Farming Today podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, rural councils warn of cuts in services and an old tradition revived in the pub.
It's just gorgeous. Everyone talks, everyone laughs. You sing, even if you cannot sing, and you know you cannot sing, you join in.
More pub carols later. First though, rural councils are warning that council tax will have to rise and there'll be cuts in services because they say the government has prioritised urban communities in the recent funding agreement. The County Councils Network, which represents 23 county councils and 13 county unitary authorities, says ministers are cherry-picking by using a formula based on deprivation, which is targeted towards city and town councils. Well, earlier this week, the government announced a £69 billion funding package for local authorities in England, a 3.8% increase, with a one-off £600 million recovery grant aimed at those in most need. The CCN says just 3 county and rural councils will benefit from that, but the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government told us the overall funding agreement is a real terms increase which will support places with a significant rural population. Councillor Barry Lewis is the Conservative leader of Derbyshire County Council and Vice Chairman of the County Councils Network.
In delivering rural services, we inevitably have a much wider, bigger footprint on which to deliver those services. We inevitably have much higher costs associated with, our infrastructure, for example. So in my own county, something like 3,000 miles worth of roads, for example. So, and a lot of it, most of it, in fact, rural and difficult and challenging. And climate change in recent years has seen our infrastructure eroded quite significantly. So in my own county, we're seeing far more landslips, for example, which is obviously, again, putting pressure on our budgets. And we're not alone in that regard as well. So, but delivering social care is in particular a really, really sort of expensive exercise when you're delivering that in our rural areas and home care and things like that. It's inevitably a much bigger cost.
The government, though, will surely argue that it has given more money. It's a 3.8% increase.
Yeah, but again, it's disproportionate because you're looking at, sort of 8-9% increases to our cities and metropolitan areas as compared to the figure you just mentioned to rural counties. So there is a big disparity. So the £600 million recovery grant that was recently announced as well goes to 34 out of 36 metropolitan boroughs, whereas just 3 county and rural areas will get any benefit.
But the government's theory here is that it's targeting money where it's most needed because it's basing these decisions on this recovery grant. It's based those decisions on the most deprived places, which surely makes sense, doesn't it, to target the most in need?
Absolutely, and I fully get that, but it's not recognising that there is rural deprivation, there's rural need as well, and that is often much more hidden.
You are able to raise council tax to try and cover some of this. Will you be able to do that?
Yes, well, of course, and we've been given that sort of dispensation to raise 2% levy in terms of social care plus 3% normal sort of council tax rate as well. And I suspect that a lot of shire counties will have to do that this year in order to make ends meet. So, overall, whilst we're getting slightly more grant from government, it falls way short. This is really hard times at the moment, and there's a real need, I think, to address this rural disparity that large shire counties like our own are facing at this moment in time.
In the longer term, the plan is to change the way local government works, to have more unitary authorities, more mayors and so on. Will that help with the finances?
Actually, I think that is one area where I think that will provide some help. Yes, I think there is the ability to save around about £3 billion across the system if we can get this right. Yeah, so that is one area where I think that will be a helpful thing to do in the coming years.
Barry Lewis. Now, yesterday we talked about the Christmas food price wars between the big retailers, which have seen a kilo of carrots come down to just 8 pence. They're usually around 69p. Well, listener Anita Rosser got in touch to say that this reveals a wider problem about how little supermarkets, retailers and consumers value fresh produce. Anita goes on to point out that much fruit and veg is routinely discounted at the end of the day because of what she calls ludicrous going off dates. Which brings us to waste. This year, Fair Share, the charity that collects surplus food and distributes it to charities, says it's expecting that between November and the end of January, it will have rescued enough food to create around 50 million meals, a 7% increase on last year. Well, it says that this is in part down to the ways it's now working with growers. Nationwide Produce, one of the biggest companies buying, selling and growing fresh fruit and veg in the UK, now partners with Fair Share and works with growers to get surpluses out to the charity. Its chairman, Tim O'Malley, has been speaking to Jago Wise for the food programme and explained how it works.
We basically supply them with all our surplus produce. It can be like overstocked, but also product that's sort of gone beyond its sell-by date, but is still fit for human consumption. And then it can be that there's a glut, and we often get that in fresh produce. For instance, we had a glut of cauliflowers recently, because so far we've had a really mild winter. And also because it's been mild, the demand hasn't been great. If you get a glut, the market price goes so low, below the cost of production. What you used to get is perfectly good cauliflowers dissed in, or if you happen to have sheep, you put them in, but if you've not, then you diss them in, you rotate them into the land, which is just such a waste. Yeah. First year I've got a scheme called SWP, Surplus with Purpose, and it's a good scheme. What they say is, we'll not pay you for the cauliflower, but we'll pay for the packaging and the harvesting. And growers are more than happy to do that.
Which I can imagine is incredibly valuable to if a farmer has excess.
Yeah, it's great, and that's one of the things you do. And then basically we've got 2 big depots in the middle of the country in Evesham, and there's always product that's overstocked and on the turn, as we call it. What we do with First Year has made us a bit more conscientious, that rather than wait for it to rot and then send it to stock feed or AD, anaerobic digestion, we try and get to the stage where it's still fit for human consumption, and then we can get First Year in and pick it up. And they do a great job because we just tell them what we've got and they just come in and pick it up.
Can I ask about wonky veg? Does any wonky veg end up from you into surplus? And what exactly does that mean from your perspective?
Wonky veg is a supermarket invention, isn't it? Misshapen carrots and so on, still perfectly good for human consumption. Generally, we're supplying more into food service, so it's less of a thing because the retailers are using it more. I mean, it used to come in more into the likes of First Year, but the retailers are marketing it more, and also the food service side, we use it. So, I mean, and this is one of the problems that we've got at First Year, and it's one of the reasons that I was brought in, is that we've never had such a burgeoning demand, and we've probably never had such a short supply, because the retailers and everybody's looking to cut down on waste, whether it be through things like wonky veg that you've mentioned, taking sell-by dates off packaging, which, is a good thing for food waste, but not such a good thing for First Year, frankly. So they're all looking to reduce waste, and the retailers have been our main source of produce. So what we're looking to do is get more from the farm gate through schemes like SWP, which we talked about, and just try and get it away from stock feed and away from AD and into the likes of First Year, and then it goes into charities to feed people.
Tim O'Malley there. You can hear more on all that in the food programme. That's at 11 o'clock this morning here on BBC Radio 4. Now, it's my last programme before the Christmas and New Year break. What better way to wish you the compliments of the season than by singing carols in the pub? It's actually a far older tradition than I realised, originating in Yorkshire in the 19th century, when people would go to the village pub and sing carols to the old tunes. Well, all this week we've been looking at the fortunes of rural pubs, and to celebrate Christmas, locals in the small market town of Bradford-on-Avon in Wiltshire are reviving village carols from Somerset, Wiltshire and Cornwall. Joe Pacey went along to the Dog and Fox to meet the singers.
We do lots of wonderful community things. We love the carols, which are happening today, but we also do a memory cafe. We have the photography club here.
Why is it important, do you think, having events like the carols taking place in your pub?
It's really key that people from different parts of life all get together, and the carols really offer an opportunity for everybody to meet up.
My name's Chris Timpson. me and my wife Anne had the idea after we went to the Sheffield carols of perhaps doing something similar in Bradford.
Okay, Anne, so tell me, what are the Sheffield carols and what do they have to do with Bradford-on-Avon?
In the 18th century going into the 19th century, there were galleries at the back of churches for musicians and the choir. And at the mid-19th century, the church authorities had a big change of things, and they tore those galleries down, and they decided to completely change all the music, including the carols, of course. So they weren't allowed to sing those carols that they'd been singing. Some people in certain areas, especially around Sheffield, started singing them in pubs. And in Cornwall, they sang them in the streets. Singing the carols near Sheffield just continued from the mid-19th century right up till now.
And so you thought, we're going to bring this to Bradford-on-Avon, and you sing lots of carols from villages around Somerset and Wiltshire.
I did quite a bit of research into this, into local carols, and the nearest one I could find was Carlingcott, which Heather will tell you about in a little while.
And Heather, so can you tell me about the Carlingcott carol then?
Well, I live in Carlingcott. It's a very tiny village, about 7 miles from Bath. And when the Baptist chapel closed down, they found this handwritten carol, and the tune was called Carlingcott, and it was written specifically for our little village. It's Hark the Herald Angels Sing, so the setting, the music, was called Carlingcott, and it was specifically for our village.
So I'm Terry Gifford, and I moved down here 7 years ago. And before that, I lived in Sheffield all my working life. So it's great to move down here and find carols being sung here. Although here, they're now developing a much more local tradition and trying to bring in carols from Wiltshire and from Somerset.
Hello, I'm Dinah, and I've been singing with the carolers for about 6-7 years now, I think.
And the last song we heard was the Nailsbourne Beasts song. Can you tell me a bit about the history of that song?
Yes, I was working as a reporter actually on Radio Bristol when I was a young girl, and I got to meet Ruth Tongue, who is a great folklorist who discovered this song, which I've never heard anywhere else from the Quantocks, about the little robin. And she claimed that this was passed on by the cowmans from father to son, and it makes a nice song, nice carol. Christ is born, and the robin sang, and the little robin sang, sweetly sang it.
My name is Hilary. I play in the band. I already knew Chris and Anne, and they said to me, come and play with Christmas tunes. And I said, here, I can't do that, me dear, because I don't read music very well. And she said, you'll get the hang of it in a minute.
Why do you think it's really special to come here to a pub and play with the community?
It's just gorgeous. Everyone talks, everyone laughs. You sing, even if you cannot sing, and you know you cannot sing, you join in.
And that's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer was Beatrice Fenton, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.